We're about to welcome once again Ms. Vernell Nichols, President of the Barbados um, National Union of Fisher Folk. I believe that Ms. Nichols is in the chamber next door and seated. So Ms. Nichols, welcome again. Good morning to you, or rather good afternoon to you. I trust that you would have had an opportunity to have a useful engagement with your constituents. Ma'am?
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. You had a chance to meet with your constituents?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Well, therefore, I think the ball is in your court. You have to now tell me what they have told you.
Okay. First, I want to thank the committee for allowing the chair, not the chair, for giving us the assistance from your committee to go through the bill with the Fisher Folk.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yes, we would have had the Deputy Chief Parliamentary
Yes,
Counsel
sir.
with you.
Yes, I forgot the name.
And Mr. Cumberbatch from my ministry.
Yes, sir.
Yes, yes,
So
yes.
we had them meeting with us last night.
Okay.
And we want to thank you for allowing them to come and go through the bill with us and helping us to clear up some of the, the information there and bring some clarity to the bill. So yes, we did have this meeting, and some of the discussions were quite robust. And because we had gone through the bill in the last meeting that I had, I'm only going to present on the discussions that came out of that meeting.
Fine.
I don't have them in any particular order as they came up, but I will present them as I have them here written.
Okay.
So question is, do I present them one by one and you reply, or do I
Please do.
present them?
I like structure and
Thank you.
order.
All
So
right.
I
Okay.
think that you go through them one by one, and we will then, as best we can, respond to you, having taken them on board. I can't promise you that everything that your organization, your union requests of us, we will be able to accede and agree to, but I can promise you that we will do our best to meet you halfway. Good?
Yes, sir.
Thank
So
you,
we
ma'am.
understand that we may not get everything we want, but the idea is just to bring the information to you and let you hear what they're saying.
Fair enough, fair enough.
Right. So as it relates to the relocation to other markets at Part 6, that is page 25. So we had a discussion here on the about the relocating a person and what constitutes the reason. Now the bill spells out here what are some of the reasons that a person can be relocated. But because we were discussing among ourselves as Fisher Folk, and we know what some of the issues are in the market, one of the things that came up was conflict among persons. And if for conflict, this is persons who from time to time or from day to day have an issue between them, if that would constitute a reason for relocating one person to another market. So we want to have that there, defined or spelled out in the bill, because we know that the powers for that would be to the manager. But some of the Fisher Folk felt that this is something that they would like to know.
So the question is whether we can include the possibility of conflict arising between stall operators as a reason for relocation.
Yes, sir.
Could you hold, please? Go ahead, Deputy Chief Parliamentary Counsel.
Chair, the possibility exists within the current markets and slaughterhouses regulations for the movement of persons, because the manager of markets has the power to give certain directions And then as it currently is as the current status, if the person then does not comply with that direction, they can be subject to a fine, and it is a criminal offense. So the thing is that we are, as we had discussed in earlier sessions, we are taking out those elements that would resort to the criminal elements. But in terms of the bill itself, that relocation mechanism, that's not really a method of use for the resolving of conflict that comes up. That has more to do with whether the particular area has become non-viable. There's an issue of hygiene or something like that. I think you may need to put it in through the lens of whether it is an issue of public order, whether it's an issue of public safety, whether it's an issue of public health, that may motivate then the relocation, and in which case you would have the consultation process. And of course I did inform the participants of the meeting with the fisherfolk that we're coming up with a mechanism for consultation.
So I think what you're saying, if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying that right now there is a possibility in the event of a conflict, let us say between two operators in a market, two operators of stall space in the market, that one could be relocated elsewhere.
Here, in probably another part of the market, I am thinking more in that vein.
But not necessarily to another market.
No, not necessarily, but it is not necessarily specified, but because of the generality of what that
I want to say something now,
provides.
Deputy Chief Parliamentary Counsel,
Yeah.
and I know that Minister Humphreys, Minister knows exactly what I'm going to say, because it is to my certain knowledge that it can arise between two stall owners that there is a challenge for the two people to coexist in the same space. And what I think we need to do is to find a way of allowing for, as we go forward, allowing for a person to be relieved of the burden of having to be a place where he or she is being made miserable, or alternatively is making others miserable, and go somewhere where there may be a more peaceful coexistence.
Chair, just to say that what I was advancing in the discussion last night was that you probably need to have a specific mechanism in place where that can be utilized as a form of redress, right? But what is coming to mind right now is probably you need a kind of grievance mechanism that is regulated by the manager of markets so as to resolve issues at a micro level, the micro level being the public market. Thank you.
But with a final position being possible that relocation of one or both might be necessary.
Yes, Chair, but I believe that you really should use that as
a
last
final,
resort.
I have no difficulty with it being a last resort, but I must tell you, as a person who has been in this business for a little while, and I'm looking across at two ministers who have had shared responsibility for markets, I think they understand what I'm speaking about experientially. Your experiences, even Minister Ware he's on board, and I believe Minister Humphrey as well. So let me go back then to Ms. Nichols. Ms. Nichols, the proposal is that we should have a grievance settlement dispute resolution type process built into the regulations. And as a final resort, if that process of dispute resolution and grievance settlement cannot be happily concluded, there would be a provision for relocation. Is that in agreement? Is something that you're in agreement with, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Matter fixed. Deputy Chief Parliamentary Counsel, make it so. Okay, are there any contributions from the floor on that matter? I don't think that there would be. Then, Ms. Nichols, point number 2.
Okay, so from the perspective now of vending, this was also a very passionate debate. So we were talking about the vending zones that is specified in the bill, and I think it came up the last time with Mr. Lewis, when we were speaking about persons using their vehicles to transport fish or to deliver fish as a form of vending. And we are saying that even now with the bill seeking to bring order and structure to the markets or the vending systems at the markets, that we want to clearly understand or to say that we would wish that we are allowed to still continue to sell our fish from the vehicles. This is going around and selling fish. This is part of our tradition, and me as the president and the minister would know that I always believe that while we are looking to make things right, better, that we don't throw out tradition to make things right, because sometimes you could try to make things right and make them worse. And
Vernell, don't go any further. Keep your gunpowder dry. I am a big man. I understand how it is to have to accept that you have made a mistake. I think that we had an error insofar as how we treated the itinerant vending. Ambassador Commission drew that to our attention this morning. I want to assure you that I have already begun discussions with the Deputy Chief Parliamentary Counsel sitting here to my left. We have made some headway as to how we can properly incorporate that into the bill, but as far as I'm concerned, I don't really need to be persuaded much more on that. I think that this is an issue that we could treat to fairly easily. If a man custom selling his fish from the back of his car and he's moving about Barbados and has done so for the last 5-10 years, how can we now come and deprive him of a livelihood in good conscience? Right? That's the concern that you have, correct?
As I myself, as a vendor, this is the way that I operate also. So I'm not only speaking for myself, I'm speaking for all the industry.
And I want to apologize to you, because when you read it and then see it, you must have wondered what this man come to try to do to you. How he humbugging you.
At my livelihood.
At your livelihood. That is not my intention, ma'am.
Thank you, sir.
So forgive me, please. We will make wrong things right in a hurry.
Right. Thank you, because this will be good news to our fisher folk, because this was really a robust conversation last night and persons was not happy with that idea at all.
Well, I need an idiot. I represent half the West Coast. You think I want to throw away all my support? Okay, we're good there. You can go to point number 3.
So, this is similar to the one that I just spoke to, but it came up last night in the meeting where a fisherman asked if he, as a fisherman, want to sell fish, if he would have to be registered as a vendor or get a license to sell fish as a vendor, even though he is a fisherman. But I want to say that we have a very complex industry. It is not as straightforward as every other industry. And we have a whole lot of different players doing different things in the market. So a fisherman, he comes in, he sells his fish. But he really only offload. He doesn't sell. He doesn't handle the money. But then we have, especially the small boat fishers, who operate as fisher vendor, because they're coming with their early catches and sell. They are asking if they have to be registered as a vendor or make an application as a vendor, even though they are fishermen. And their selling is not even 2 hours, because there are these small boat fishers who would bring in the chubs and those types of fish that offload quickly and go out to the market. So we are saying that if they are expected to, well, the bill that speaks to vendoring and they are seen as fisher vendor, if there can be some type of clause to exempt them from having to apply for the vendor's license, more because they are fishers.
I thought you were going to put it the other way around, that you would not want them to have the ability of getting a license to do the selling that they wanted to do. But let me just throw this in the direction of the Deputy Chief Parliamentary Counsel. Deputy CPC, pot fish, chubs, those gentlemen who come off the boat and selling, maybe doing for 3 hours. How would we treat to them, please?
Chair, from my understanding of the discussion, the best way to really deal with those, that type of activity is really to exempt it from the whole licensing regime for vendors, because from what I understand, it's really an interaction between those fishermen and vendors, like actual vendors, are not
necessarily the public.
Right, not necessarily interaction with the public. And so it may be useful then to put that activity, to capture it in clause 3.2 as an activity that would not be considered to be vending.
In clause 3.2 as an activity that would not, okay, see, it would not be construed as vending for the purposes of this act. Fair enough. Does that meet with your approval, Ms. Nichols?
Yes, sir.
Very good.
I just want clarity, Chair, very quickly.
Minister.
Is it only in cases? Sorry.
Sorry, no, Minister Humphrey, floor is yours.
Sorry, my apologies, Chair. I spoke before you allowed me to. Sorry, but I just want to be sure, Ms. Nichols, you are asking only where the fisherman is selling to the vendor, or where the fisherman is selling to the public. Just for clarity, for my own clarity. Your mic is muted.
Ms. Nichols, you understand the question? You're muted. I think you're on mute. I think you may be on mute, Ms. Nichols.
Hello?
There you go. We can hear you now.
Thank you. Right, so the yes, so if the fisherman is selling to the vendors, that he would not be considered vendoring, but just he's a fisher selling. The ones that sell, the ones I spoke about earlier that sell the chubs and those kind of fish, right? There are fishers and also vendors. So my question was whether they had to register also for the vendoring license as well as having their fisher's license.
Chair, as I explained last night, yes, they would have to then be registered as a vendor, because you're now interacting with the public.
And I think that is the spirit of the legislation, Ms. Nichols. This may be one of those where you may now have to meet me halfway, because I think that I can understand what you're saying, and I can agree with you that if the sale is to the vendors themselves, having brought it in, and I'm now going to make sure that the vendors get the fish. No issues there, no need for a license. But if you're going to now sell to the public, I think that we got to treat everybody who's selling to the public in the same way. Would you be inclined to agree?
Yes, sir.
So you're good with that then? A license for that? A license for those who are selling to the public?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Fine. Make it so, Deputy Chief Parliamentary Counsel.
So just to make it absolutely clear, you would not be amending the bill to make provision for that, because if you're a vendor, if you're a person who is wanting to engage in vending as understood by the bill, then you are required to get the license.
Right.
However, if you are a person who is a fisherman who is selling to a vendor, then
Yes.
that will be the amendment that will be made. It will
Yes.
be included as one of the activities that will not be considered to be vending for the purposes of the act, and that is where the amendment will take place. Thank you.
That is what we have agreed to.
Sorry, Chair. I totally agree with the position. Huh? Let me just say that up front. I totally agree. But I'm wondering what, at the meeting last night, was there pushback from the fishermen in relation to this particular
As I understand it,
Fundis, what happened at the meeting, sorry, what happened at the meeting was that a fisherman himself, he was asking the question, if he as a fisher, he came in and he wanted to, I think he meant if he wanted to sell fish to, and this is his own fish, this is not necessarily he coming out and selling every day as a rule. He is coming in and he's selling maybe his own fish, which is what they call it well, it is fish that they would usually get from the boat as part of their, I don't remember what they call it. But they're talking about selling that fish. They're not talking about a daily selling of fish. Like
dinner,
a person.
dinner fish is the term
yes,
you're
sir.
looking for?
Thank you, sir. Better fisherman than me. But
I'm
yes.
close to people who are in the fishing industry.
Right, they call it their dinner fish. My head is a bit,
dinner fish, yes, right.
my head just a bit roughed up now. But they call it their dinner fish. So they're not talking about if they are selling this one-off fish. I understand if it is a daily operation, then it is seen as vending and therefore included as a vendor's license. But not if they're coming, they just sell the fish that they use for dinner fish and maybe sell to some person. So I think that is where the person was coming from, more so than an ongoing vending, as we discussed just now.
Very quickly, Chair, and the senior manager of markets just sent me a message to say that in that case you would have perhaps more vendors than there is space in the market, so we'd have to make the differentiation between being able to vend generally and being able to the vendor's license and permit for the market, because we'd assign vending licenses to people to vend in the market, but then when you give the fishermen vending license, so as to not create confusion and them thinking they could vend also in the market. So just as we think it through, just to make sure that the vending license does not permit you in this instance to be able to sell fish in the market, because the spaces are limited.
But where will it be sold then?
It would have to be, well, I got the impression that this would be cases of fish being sold outside the market, like when they're actually in the communities, and so on. Or if you do it in the market, then I think there are practical considerations here now, Chair. Trust me, there are going to be practical considerations. Unless, because the vending license then, as a fisherman sells fish now, he sells it in the back of the market. If you go to Bridgetown, when a fisherman comes in, he will sell his fish at the back of the market, never interacts really with the front. There's no reason for that to change, even if we issue a license. I think what the senior manager is asking is, if you give them a vending license, so as to not create the confusion that they then automatically get a space in the market, which would then cause problems. It's something we'll have to work through, I think.
But sir, on a whole, fishermen don't really sell fish in the market to the extent that they operate in there on a daily basis or all day. The fishers that you may find selling fish is those that I spoke about earlier, which is the ones that sell the chubs and those kind of things. They sell them some to the vendors, and if there are some to the public, they will do it. But this is the operations that finishes in at least maybe 2 to 3 hours. I don't even think it is 3 hours after coming in. But then most of their fish is sold to the vendors. But we just want to know, we just want to make sure that for the purposes of this bill, we have everything in order, all the ducks in a row, and that persons understand exactly what it is they are allowed to and not do.
Yeah. I don't think we have a problem with the first point, which is that the fishermen selling to the vendors would require no license. We can agree on that. I don't think we have a problem with the second point, which is that the fishermen who are going to sell would require a license if you're going to sell to the public. Where we have a little bit of an issue here is how do we get that second one to fit neatly into the circumstances of the market's space, because we be empowering somebody to, not empowering them, authorizing them to sell within the market, well, to sell like any other vendor, but they would not have a specific space assigned to them. And that is something that Minister Humphrey and yourself are going to have to work out, Ms. Nichols.
Well, I think that we can speak to some of the fishers, but as I said earlier, they're very, I don't even know of fishers who actually, you know, go out there selling on the road per se. And if they do, it is only 1 or 2 persons that I know who would go and sell with like the jacks and those kind of things.
Now let me ask a question. How y'all would treat for example, in Paynes Bay, some of the guys would land, but there's a fact, but I gotta ask you a question. In Paynes Bay, some of the fellas, the boat would come in, and these small fish, very often, because the market is now being fixed happily, so Paynes Bay market will be circumstances where people will want to be in it. But before, the market was not always the most commodious, and so guys would sell alongside the road. How would you treat to that?
Right. This is what I spoke about the last time I was here.
Right.
And I said that these guys sell for practically 2 to 3 hours and they're gone. So we were looking at how we can set them up. Presently, as you said, you drive along, you see they have a little table set up there and the fish is there. So for the purposes of food hygiene and the standards, we can look at how we can retrofit some type of box for them to have that can hold ice and that can be removed from where they are once they have finished. So we upgrading them, but we are still holding the tradition that presently exists, because as we rightfully say, there's no room in the market for everybody, but we don't want to disadvantage other persons, even by bringing out the bill and these different things, you know, different regulations that would be coming. So we can look at, you know, between us, the quality control officers and those persons who are responsible for health, and speak to the same fishers and see how we can go about upgrading, changing standards, maintaining tradition, and allowing persons to continue to work.
And in as much as we are going to make the accommodation for itinerant vendors, in keeping with that cultural practice that you're quite rightly pointing us to, Ms. Nichols, because I'm thinking now, and forgive me if I just put on a parochial hat here, as a member of parliament for a constituency that has a fish market, that I had to fight hard for to get fixed, so I want to give thanks to the minister now for fixing it. Because it was actually, it would shock you, Ms. Nichols, to hear that there were those people who said that it was closed down in order to be sold. It actually got so bad. I don't know what they could say now it is fixed, but that's another matter for another time. As a member of parliament with a fish market in my constituency, and knowing that there has been a history when the circumstances of the fish market were not satisfactory, where people would have sold on the street just down the road from the fish market. You wouldn't want to deprive that you can't shut down a culture or legislate a culture away. It is a reality in Barbados. What we have to do is to find a way of making the orderly environment, the safety for the public, etc., become part of that cultural experience. You quite rightly, I think, have pointed us to the fact that there are some solutions, like the boxes which which can be created, or some may already exist, that are effectively little refrigerated compartments so that the fish can be kept at certain temperatures so that you don't have the sanitary and phytosanitary issues arising. Now, if we allow for persons to vend in those circumstances with that type of equipment, then effectively they are doing the same thing as or almost the same thing as the itinerant person. The itinerant person may decide to do it from, as you indicated, you yourself have done, from in your vehicle. Or I might decide instead of using my vehicle, I can just walk down the street and I can do it from wherever. Does it make sense to you that we treat the two as though they were one and the same?
I think that once we are making decisions, that we identify and set the criteria for what is to be done. Persons like myself who sell from my car would not be interested in selling fish on the side of the road.
Right.
And the purpose of, and again, one of the things that we should point to is that this is really a whole change in environment, especially in not only in the fishing industry, around the in the whole country. And given the circumstances that is happening today with the COVID and other economic issues, persons are now treating to delivering fish to persons home at their houses. Because we know now persons don't want to come out of their houses, we know that having started this whole thing of delivering fish, people are becoming more comfortable, and I believe that even after COVID, it is something that will continue, because it is not only fish, it is, along the food chain, people are now delivering, ordering, and food going home to persons. So I think that once we decide, and it could be a different meeting for the purposes of clearing up this whole issue of itinerant vending and understanding what are the criteria, because I don't think the decision can be made here today, but that we can have another meeting maybe with the same persons who operate at the side of the road, because we always have to engage with persons to even get more clarity on exactly what it is that they do before we make decisions. But I'm only raising it here, and it can be flagged as another discussion.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, I thank you for that. Minister Adrian Ford.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to, we look at itinerant vending, and I just want to say, is it not possible for us to have a separate license for that special case of fisher folk? Recognizing, of course, that they have no intention to sell the fish, dinner fish, chubs, parrotfish, whatever you call it, in the market itself, and have the market as an exclusive zone for them, where they were able to sell in communities. Especially, they come on the normal vending regime. They apply like everybody else, but their license will be specific for the purposes of selling outside of the marketplace.
Things that should be noted also is that with the changing dynamics of the industry, that we have persons doing multiple things in the industry now, and that some persons were calling for specific license if it is that has to be regulated, so that persons would have specific license for what they do. Because I can be a person who's selling fish. I can also be a person who is in the market boning fish. I could be carrying fish to a hotel or restaurant. I could be a boat owner, or I could be a fisher. So you could have persons doing the whole chain. So it is a dynamic industry that I think people need to understand clearly what happens.
And I agree with you, Ms. Nichols. And in fact, because I agree with you so much, that's the reason why I asked the question I just asked. Because to me, what I don't want to happen or run the risk of happening is to have the legislation restrict you. I want it to facilitate you and to empower your growth. I think this is what Ambassador Commission warned us against this morning as well. And I think that y'all pointed us to a weakness that we were in danger of overlooking, which is that we didn't have a clear position on how we treat to those people who we call itinerant vendors or mobile vendors. moving from place to place. Now, the extent to which I choose to move is a matter entirely for me. My neighborhood might be such that I don't have to move very far. I leave the market and I go stone's throw away, and pretty much I am able to dispose of whatever it is I had to dispose of. Equally, there may be some people who, like you, choose to drive, and you may, I don't know how far you drive, but you may cover far more distance than I do. The reality is that that's the Barbados we grew up in. I grew up hearing a gentleman used to drive to ride a bicycle through the district, and he was voicing fish, fish, and you know the fish coming virtually to your door. You can't kill that culture. What we got to do is facilitate it properly and protect the public from those dangers that might exist in terms of health and so on, and safety, food safety, and those types of things. So that I think that we can structure this license in such a way that we allow what you are asking for to continue, but at the same time we have a licensing regime which we were in danger of overlooking. And I think that that is really how we will have to deal with this business of the itinerant vendor. So be of good cheer. I think that the point is noted and taken on board by us here. Minister Ford, did you want to come back again? Do you have a follow-up question or observation? You wanted to hear the Deputy Chief.
Chair, no, sorry. Chair, yes. Well, what I was proposing is essentially what you would have articulated, which is that you would have to classify the type of activity that Ms. Nichols is speaking to as a type of itinerant vendor. The question then becomes, how do you craft a definition that will capture all the activities that it would need to capture, as well as define the scope of operation. And that becomes a particular policy depth discussion, especially when we're balancing it against the fact that you want to be able to deal with vending zones as well. So that has to be discussed, and that is for the committee to make decisions policy-wise, and then they will instruct our office to sue. Thanks.
Thank you very much. So, Ms. Nichols, you can be of good cheer on that one. Are there any others that you had on your list?
Not on that one. I think we can move away from that one.
Okay.
Right. So another point was the fee.
The what?
The fees. The
fees.
Yes.
Yes.
Fees. Sorry.
Right. Yeah.
Regarding the first one I'll speak about is the $100 for the license. On hindsight, it looks and sounds like it is quite reasonable, but then I had some of my own mathematicians in the industry help me with some of these numbers. So basically we're talking about the $100, and we said that we felt that it was, we usually pay $10 for our license, and now the jump is straight to a direct 100.
You usually pay $10 a what? How do you?
A year. This is for the license that was issued to us through Markets Division, right? And the discussions, because we did have discussions after Miss meeting last night among ourselves, and I had asked them to propose what they thought they could, work with, and they proposed the $50 for the year. And because we said that it was from 10 to 50 would have just been a 40% increase, as opposed to $100, which is a 90% increase.
I have noted what you have said, ma'am. I want to ask a question just for the purposes of context. Had there been discussions going on between the ministry and yourselves with respect to the fees that are being charged? Because that $10 seems to be, I think it is the lowest fee that I have heard across the vending industry, vending sector of this economy.
And this is why, well, since this bill here came to us now and the changes are coming, that we are discussing it among ourselves as fisher folk. And I asked persons what they thought would be a reasonable price for the increase, saying that we were paying the $10 for so many years, and they said $50.
Okay.
But you see, they weighed that too with the fact that while persons may think that, you know, we have this big booming industry, there are still costs that they are incurring that I hope I get an opportunity to. I'm only going to be interested in talking about costs, but that for the context of understanding that even though $100 may seem okay up front to the persons that are crafting the bill, that we as vendors and fisher folks, that we are also incurring other costs, and that when you add all those things together, especially in this economic times that we have, especially in the times where now we are not having the type of landings that we are accustomed to having, a whole lot of changes and a whole lot is taking place in this industry, that we are operating. We don't really complain, we work with what we have, but we do have financial challenges just like most other sectors. And this is what we want to ask the committee to bear in mind when they are speaking about costs. Don't look at the overall picture, but to understand that there's more to the picture than what is being seen.
I understand. I just wanted to double check with you. In the context of where you are now with the $10 a year, had the Ministry of Maritime Affairs and Blue Economy reached out to you all with a view to increasing your fees prior to this bill coming? In other words, is there an ongoing conversation with the ministry, because that helps us to get some perspective?
The conversation with the license is different to the conversation about the market toll, which is like rent. So there was not a conversation regarding the license of itself. There were conversations regarding the toll, which is the $75 that is being spoken about a lot. And I hope that I want to say something on that also.
Yes. All right. I mean, at this point, we can only note what you have said with regard to the representation that you're making, and your representation is that the organization would prefer a fee for the license to be more in the vicinity of $50, that $100 is too steep an increase from the $10 it now is. Correct?
Sir.
Right. Okay. Please proceed to the next one. We've got.
All right. We know, although this year the fee it has been brought up, and I'm sure that the minister is going to come to us again with it. So I felt that, you know, since I have the opportunity here, that I would raise it here, because it is also a discussion that is ongoing within the fishery sector. And this is to do with the toll, which is the 75 cents that we were speaking about on numerous occasions. We know that a raise is going to come. And in previous discussions with the minister, there were some folks who said they were okay with the $5 raise. But Minister, I want to tell you that since last night, and people are looking at things more serious and more structured, I don't think that they're really happy with this $5 that they were proposing to you before. And therefore, I had them worked out.
So let me just make sure we're all on the same page, please, Ms. Nichols. The toll for those here, this is the fee that you would pay for the use of a space in the market, correct?
Sure.
Yes. And that is now at 75 cents.
Yes,
right?
sir.
A year?
A day.
A day, okay. And, all right, you proceed, because I think we have all the other figures. At one point, the Ministry of Maritime Affairs was raising the possibility that it could go as high as $5 a day.
Right. So this is what I was saying earlier, that in previous discussions from meetings we had with the minister, when the question was asked what persons thought they would be willing to pay in terms of moving from 75 cents, and some persons felt they were okay with $5. And given the scenario that we are having now, especially we're really not having these good seasons that we are used to because of the landings and all the other things that are now impacting and complicating the industry. So from the meeting last night, we had some discussions regarding the fee. And we note that the 75 cents a day that we are customer paying at $30 amount to $22.50 a month,
Correct.
which is $270 a year.
Correct.
Some proposals were that the fee should move from that to $150, which would be $45 a month at 30 days, right? Which is $540 a year. And the second proposal.
Sorry, go, give me that again. Give me that figure again, please.
So we started at the 75. You mean that one?
Yeah, I have that. I know you 75 cents by 30, and then
right. 75 cents by 30, which is $22.50 a month, is
right.
$270 a year.
And then you came to $270 a year for the 12-month period. Fine.
Right. So then I asked persons what they thought would be a reasonable fee for them to move to. And I'm just presenting the two options that was given to me.
Right.
And then we are going to compare it to the $5 that was previously stated by some of the fisher folk.
Okay.
So we looked at the toll as $150 a day, which is $45 a month, which is $540 a year. And then we looked at $2 a day, which is $60 a month, which is $720 a year. So when we compare it to the proposal of $5 a day, which is $150 a month, and that moved to $1,800 a year. Persons felt that that was very steep an increase, and looking at their other expenses and what is happening with sometimes you don't work, and I can testify to that as a vendor. We usually have a fishing industry a fishing season that starts in November, and since 2011, when the influx of this sargassum started, we have been having some very up and down years.
I take the point.
And therefore, the financial situation as it was in the better days is not as it is today.
Correct.
And landings and those other things amount for a lot of, so
right.
Sometimes we don't even have the 6 months of the year that the season is. Sometimes we don't even get that 6 months fully in the season.
Bear with me 1 minute, please. Ms. Nichols, I am indebted to you. I want to thank you for raising this matter in the very in-depth way that you are raising it. There are a couple of things that I'm going to say here now. First of all, I'm going to take your minister by surprise because Minister Humphrey would not be aware of the fact that there is, in fact, a proposal, as we have been looking at the drafting of this matter, to, first of all, decriminalize. There's a criminal element attached to not paying the toll. So the first thing is we want to take away that criminalization of the process so there'll be no criminal penalties associated with the toll going forward. That's the first thing. The second thing is the issue arises as to the desirability of having the toll if we're going to have a license fee in the way we have it. Now, that is not a matter that I can determine, and it's not a matter that this committee by itself can determine. I think really this is a matter that lies within the jurisdiction of the Ministry of Maritime Affairs, because they have the responsibility for the management of the fish market and the maintenance of the fish market. So we cannot speak lightly to changing the toll. But I can say to you that one of the considerations that we have is that the $100 fee, and it may well be a question of where the $100 fee goes to, whether the $100 fee goes to the consolidated fund for the whole purposes of the central government, or whether it is targeted directly to the management of the fish markets. That's something that probably will have to be settled. But we were looking at the balance between that $100 fee and the toll that you have pointed us to. And I think that everybody listening could easily follow the logic in what you're saying, because if you have a toll at 75 cents a day, that carries you up to $270 a year, on top of a $100 fee, the fisher folk would be paying a heavy penalty to the state by comparison to some others who are vending. So we're going to have to look at that carefully. Minister Humphrey.
Chair, I agree we have to look at it carefully, and I will leave that particular point there. Just to make the point, the 75 cents that vendors pay has been at that rate for, I think, about 40 years. 75 cents a day, sir, if you're being fair, and I think there also has to be a sense of fairness in these conversations. And God knows I love the vendors, and I don't hide it, and they know it too. But at 75 cents a day, we are not even scraping the reality of what it costs to run a market. It is already, extremely heavily subsidized. It then makes me wonder if the point made with the opposition leader earlier in relation to why charge a fee in the first place is of even greater value. It makes me wonder, because the 75 cents that is paid, our water bill in the market is, if I were to share it, it would shock you. It is extremely high. The maintenance, the cleaning, the upgrades that we just did to all the fish markets across Barbados, none of which we've associated a cost to pass on with the vendors. The raising of the 75 cents, Chair, has more to do with the fact that over time, the vendors themselves, I understand Vernal to be saying that they've changed their mind, but the vendors themselves were the ones suggesting that it was too low. So this is a conversation, sir, that I think we should have with the vendors and in the ministry. I am not sure what clarity perhaps the deputy CPC could share with me in relation to whether this bill now seeks to allow the vending rents to be associated with this bill, or if that remains a matter separate from maritime. Because as far as I understood it, I might have been wrong, the license fees were for the bill and the rent fees remained an issue for maritime, separate and distinct from this conversation. And that if we're going to resolve that conversation, it should be resolved in another place, with conversation between the vendors and maritime. But I must say to you, sir, that while I hear Vernell and while I understand the challenges that everybody is facing, the reality is that it costs a lot of money to run a market, and that 75 cents a day, being 40 years since we were charging 75 cents a day, doesn't begin to capture. So I hear Vernell listing item by item why it's difficult, but I'm just saying that if we were to list item by item too, So I'm just saying there's a conversation to be had, and hopefully we won't have to have that conversation here, sir.
No, and agreed. I don't know if the deputy chief wishes to make a comment at this point.
Chair, just to say that we're not interfering with the stall rents mechanisms. The fish toll issue only came up because it has that criminal element that you had to take out, and so like in the future drafts I had actually included it for taking out altogether. But the first part that deals with the toll, because it has implications for your ministry, we couldn't just take it out wholesale. So that is a
I totally understand and
yeah.
agree. Thanks. Thanks.
And so that has been, so I think that the discussion as it relates now would be to keep that paragraph 1 of the 47. We take out the criminal element, but the fish toll part we will leave in. But as I said before, the stall rents mechanisms we haven't interfered with, but I did note from the discussions that it should be spoken about still as a part of a larger discussion of what it costs to do business as a vendor.
I agree and I understand. Thank you. Thanks, Chair, and thanks, Deputy
Grateful to you,
CPC.
Minister. And
Chair.
Ms. Nichols,
Yes, sir.
Let me just also say to you, I know you want to have the floor again. I just want to say to you that in the context of what we have just gone through, I wanted to take you back to the fact that your proposal of $50 a year even more deeply now resonates with me. So we are going to work this through amongst ourselves, but I have taken it on board. I can't go any further than that without having a wider discussion with the committee. The floor is yours, ma'am.
Yes, I just want to say to the committee and to the minister that even in my discussions or speaking to some of the vendors this morning, they're still of the opinion that the fee at 75 cents can raise. So it is not that they are saying that they don't want to, that they want to continue to pay the 75 cents, because they have accepted and they have articulated themselves that given the use of water, I've heard from different persons from different markets in their own sentiments talking about the uses of water, electricity, and things that they themselves uses, that they accept that the 75 cents is really low. So it is not that they are not willing or interested in having a raise. I was just giving a comparison in terms of where we are now and where we are going, using different figures to assist us in arriving at a fairly comfortable place to benefit all of us.
Accepted. That is accepted. And I appreciate, I recognize and I appreciate the fact that you are engaging in that necessary negotiation. There has to be a give and take. And that's one of the reasons why I must tell you, and I repeat again, the proposal of $50 a year has resonated with me. We will find a solution to this, Vernell, but we need to have some discussions amongst ourselves in this committee as we go forward. There were other points that you wanted to raise, I am sure.
That was the last point that I had written down.
Okay.
My last comment would only be to say that we are seeing a growing sector, but the fish catches is slowly declining. So while we have persons coming in who are now interested in being in the industry, things are changing in terms of catches and landings and those kind of things. So we just want for you to take these things into consideration when this bill is being, put together, and that we would like to know. Then this is another question. The concern was when this bill will go into effect, because persons, even though we brought it up last night, the deputy
Chief
Ms. Bell,
right.
She said that it wasn't written in stone, so we know that there are changes that will go on given the discussions that we are having. But if we can get an idea of when this particular bill will go into effect, because we would like to be ready when things change.
My simple answer to you is to tell you two things. One, to help you understand the process. The very last provision of this bill very last clause makes provision for the bill to come into effect by what they call proclamation, which is an announcement that will be made to the public that on X date, whatever that date is, the bill takes effect. There's a little bit of work that has to be done. The person who spoke before you to this committee was Mr. Sherlock King, who's the manager of markets. And he indicated, for example, on the traditional markets that are run by the Ministry of Agriculture side, not the fishery side, that there are some issues that they have with regard to, for example, storage, being able to take care of perishable items and so on that may need to be seized and then returned to the owner, those types of things. It is going to be a little bit of work that has to be done even after we pass Parliament to get the necessary infrastructure right. The vending zones, we have started to identify some of them, but as you know, right now if you drive along the highway in Barbados, coconuts being sold all along the highway. If we create vending zones, none of them have any running water yet, none of them have any bathroom facility, etc. So these are things that have to be done. The intention is to get them done quickly, but I could not say at this point that on the 1st of January next year, for example, we will be ready to do this. We are going to be working with the greatest possible dispatch, though, in order to get there. So my advice to you, Vernell, will be to say to your constituents that this is something that is coming, start to get their house in order, because it will be sooner rather than later. I know those are general terms, but that's the best that I could do at this stage. What we can undertake to do for you is to keep you abreast of developments, and I would assume that your minister would want to personally continue to interact with you all, so that if there are challenges or matters about which you need to be, alerted, that you all will have an ongoing interface on this. From my own position, I am happy to work with him in that regard too.
Chair, just to raise the point about clause 33 as well. This was raised in last night's meeting, which is a transitional provision. What it does is that any licenses, and I have to also include permits that are issued under the NCC Act or the Markets and Slaughterhouses regulations, will be valid for a year after the commencement of the Act. And then, after the expiration of that period, then the person will then seek to
Apply
for the next
license.
Yes.
Right.
So that is also a mechanism that is designed to help with that transition from the previous system to this new system.
Right. So that persons with a license now that may have 6 months, let's say we were to start tomorrow, if you have 6 months left in your license, you run out that 6 months and then you apply for the new one. Yeah?
That is the contemplation,
Yeah.
but we did identify the year.
No, I understand. I understand. So, Ms. Nichols, there's a little bit of work still to be done in terms of the supporting infrastructure to get this right, because as you would appreciate, this is a giant leap. It is a big leap legally in terms of the legal relationship that vendors have had with the law. It is a big leap administratively because the different departments of government have to be brought on stream, and there's some physical work that we have to do in terms of our infrastructure to support this. Have I made myself clear, ma'am?
What I want to say is, I forgot this actually, is that we have as far as the registering or the applications for the vendoring, we have this outlined under the regulations of vending activities. But what I'm not seeing and what is not clear, I think I brought it up in last night meeting and the previous meeting, and I would like it to be able to be spelled out somewhere, in terms of the application, some clarity needs to be done. We know that it's going to be online, but we don't know how the money is to be paid in. So we want those things, clear or clearly defined so that we can know exactly what is to happen. Because what I seek to do at this time is that I'm going to start to prepare the fisher for those persons who might have the challenges of using the online system, to start to teach them how to make these applications and register and use the online or the digital system to do their business going forward. So we would like that there's some clarity to that process. To say to the minister, this morning I had to ask to get my head clear to meet here with y'all, but coming out to the meeting last night, we have 1 or 2 markets where persons are calling to see him and meet with him because I guess they want to go through the same.
They're calling to see their minister.
Yes, sir.
And I believe that he will go to them. I have no doubt. In fact, he coming to you now.
Minister, Chair, recall that I actually told Vernell yesterday to send me the link to the meeting, and I wanted to attend. But you recall, like all of us yesterday, we had an extensively long cabinet meeting well into the evening, so I apologize, but I will make myself available to the...
They really miss you, and specifically the Oysins group.
I know, they sent me a message.
Morning and they tell the minister we want to see him.
They sent me a message, so I will make my way to Oysins.
Crazy from these meetings and what was discussed.
But in relation to the actual legislation, I am sure I can offer no more value than the Deputy CPC offered, but I will make myself available. Absolutely. I'll be at Oysins before the end of next week. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Vernell, I'm going to ask the Deputy Chief Parliamentary Counsel just to say a word on that last point that you had made, though, please.
Yes, Chair. As I said last night, those things can be worked out in regulations, and it is just that you need policy direction in relation to that. Usually when you are stating in an act that you will have to pay to a particular functionary, that is how it is left. In terms of then working it out, usually it would be an administrative thing, but you can also specify it in regulations, and this was explained on a number of occasions last night.
No,
Thank you.
I understand that. And Ms. Nichols, let me say to you that the policy issue now for us is to get those nuts and bolts together to hold let's use the example of a vehicle. You have the door, you have the big pieces. You got the door, you got a trunk, you got a bonnet, etc. But you have to hold them together by certain things. We now have to hold it together by these nuts and bolts that you're pointing us to. How the payment is made, to whom is the payment made, what is the mechanism, can you do it online, etc., etc. They will come by way of regulations that will be done. This is an early stage in the process. And as you would appreciate, given the nature of this bill, because this bill is speaking to a regime that touches the beaches and the parks and the gardens in Barbados where vending is done, but that has absolutely nothing to do with the fish markets where vending is also done, and it has absolutely nothing to do with the traditional marketplaces like Eagle Hall Market and so on, where vending is also done, and equally has nothing to do with the highways and byways of Barbados where vending is also done. So we're trying to pull everybody together, treat everybody as equally as possible, and then have the regulations built out across all these different ministries and departments where it has never been able to be done before. So it is a little bit of heavy work. But the next stage is to have those regulations for you. So you don't have to worry about that. You will be party to that discussion. As to the plans you are making, I think you're on the right track. You have to be prepared to work with your constituent members so that they can do this online, because I suspect that some of it will be done online. But even if not exclusively, we'll be encouraging people to use the electronic technology in keeping with where the whole country is going now. I want to thank you, though, for the spirited participation. I love the fact that you took time to say to us that you wanted to go and consult and come back. I'm grateful that you did so. I want to also thank the Deputy Chief Parliamentary Counsel and also the Senior Business Development Officer in my ministry for being there with you all last night. I'm told that the meeting may have gone on until after 9 o'clock. And when people speak in very unfortunate terms about the public service, they very often forget that this is the kind of sacrifice that public officers make for the greater good of the country. So I want to go on record as thanking those public officers for the work that they have done to assist us, and would urge that the committee properly note that as well. I want to say to you, Vernell, that we are going to now, we've now come to the point where we are ending the aspect of this committee's business where we are taking evidence. So you are our last witness, and we will now go to a stage where we prepare a report on all that has transpired, and that report will be laid before Parliament, and the report will be debated. We will take from that body of the report those things that we can put into the bill so as to make it a better bill in the interest of the vending community, and then that bill will go through the final stages of the parliamentary debate. It has already begun, so it is just a question of continuing that. And I would imagine, Vernell, that within the next 3 weeks or so, we would have completed that stage, and so therefore the work would then begin to make sure that all of the markets and the highways and byways of Barbados now start to see the changes that need to be made so that this new legislation can be given full life and meaning on a day-by-day basis. Are you with me?
I want to say that we made the recording of the meeting last night available to the Chief Parliamentary, Ms. Bell.
Sorry, I didn't hear you.
No, I said I just wanted to let you know that we made the recording of last night's meeting available to
Ms. Bell.
Ms. Bell, yeah.
Oh, okay. That is good. Fine. Thank you. Thank you. So in those circumstances, Vernell, we are going to take a late lunch, and I want to invite you to lunch if you care to join us. And I would want to ask for a motion then that this meeting now will stand adjourned.
Sir, so moved that the meeting is adjourned, please.
Moved by Minister Humphrey, seconded by Minister Ford. Colleagues, the meeting now stands adjourned. I'm obliged to you. Please have a good weekend and stay safe.